well, what is enough? And I wanted to truly answer that from a practical, philosophical point of view. Why do you want more at the end of the day? I was so driven by money because I grew up in a family that didn't have money. It's one of the easiest scoreboards to look up at. But the things that miss that, what am I not seeing by looking up at that? Am I seeing the relationship with my wife, my 4 daughters, myself, my friends, my health? I want to be able to achieve fantastic business success, be in great physical shape. I want to have a great marriage and sex life. I want to be an incredible father to my daughters. Like, I don't want to just be a one-dimensional human being. And so I've worked to try and keep it practical at the end of every day. I rank myself in 6 areas of life: as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, and my health and my happiness. At the start of the day, I'll give myself an intention.
In each of the areas, or just an overall intention?
Each of the areas, I'll write an intention for the day. I do believe that we need a North Star to work toward. But for me, so many of my mistakes was I was too goal orientated, where now I think of, okay, that's my North Star. What are the processes and systems that I do on a daily basis? And I just focus on that. The Buddha says, when emptiness and compassion has arisen, enlightenment is unavoidable. That's a bold promise that he's making. So for me, I'm saying, well, how do I craft the identity so that I'm doing the things that will then get me to where I want to go in an unavoidable fashion?
Well, welcome back to Austin, Chris.
Thank you so much, brother. It's good to be here.
How you feeling today? You just landed yesterday.
I'm feeling good, especially after the workout and little swim that we just had. I'm feeling fresh. I'm sure jet lag will kick in later, but that's perfectly fine for now.
How many times have you done the trip to the States?
Oh, a couple dozen.
You have?
Yeah.
So you got it down pat by now?
Yeah. I'm usually here 2 to 3 times a year now, just because I love coming back and love being able to hang out with people just like yourself and have fun conversations, and just, it's a place where I feel drawn to be able to kind of top myself up in certain areas of life.
Well, let's talk about some of those areas, because you and I met a year ago when I came on your podcast. We had a great conversation, great connection, and we're trying to do the podcast, have you come on mine, but we just kind of ran out of time. So super grateful for that conversation, and especially the season I was in that period. I hadn't done many podcasts with the exception of obviously my own. And it's really interesting for me to go back and listen, because it was definitely a transition where I was having a lot of challenges on many different fronts. And I really appreciated the way you guided the conversation and allowed me to work through stuff in real time. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Because from my perspective, I very clearly remember walking away from that conversation, one, being very grateful that you came into my life and being like, wow, Cal's an amazing dude. Like, I want more of this guy in my life. 2, the conversation was fantastic because I feel like we just opened up to each other and just like, hey, this is the shit that's going on in life right now for us. And we were just there to help each other. I literally felt like I was just sitting down with another good mate and just being able to be like, how do we help each other? Where's this conversation need to lead to? What do we need to say to each other? What are the things that need to come out of me that just need to be said in a safe space? And it was pretty funky that there's also cameras and microphones around at the same time, but that's part and parcel of it.
Yeah, well, and I came to pick you up, downtown, and we had a great 45-minute kind of catch up on the way in, and certainly was a podcast in and of itself. But I do want to drop back into some of those conversations, because as I was getting ready for this podcast, there was so much about what you've been through, what you're currently going through, the questions you're asking, and a lot of the same things that I've been confronted with. And for the better part of 3 years was not ready to go there, and found my own form of disengagement and disconnection and numbing that allowed me to kind of stay in the safe space that was not, it was very stuck. Back in October, middle of October, you stepped away from, you took a digital sabbatical from your podcast, from YouTube, from Instagram, What inspired that? What did you learn from that? And what's it been like to come back to the space?
I appreciate you asking. I had a few things happen in life where it was tugging at me. And then when I truly looked upon myself, when I truly reflected upon myself, when I was truly asking myself, like, what is best for me to actually show up as a man, as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, as a son, I kept seeing a thread pulling back to these other things such as the podcast, the YouTube, the Instagram, the social media, all of that stuff, being like, well, that's not aligned with me. And so I felt like I had gone through this transition. Do you know of Alison Armstrong's work?
Oh,
okay. So we
did
might
you hear
touch
Lindsay
upon
laugh
this.
over there?
Yeah, there was a chuckle.
I just came into it through Chase, who you just met. I came into it as I was popping out of the tunnel. And it gave me context for what the fuck I just experienced over the past 3 years.
So I got introduced to her work with me midway through the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And which would have been when we last met.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
We're tunnel brothers.
Oh, dude. I'd sold the company, sold the last company. We had moved. We were living in Bali for 9 years. And my wife and I had decided it's time for a change. It's time for us to move. And then Australia was kind of like the next step that we thought we were going to go back to, but not back to Sydney where we were from. So for me, it was 11 years being outside of Australia. So it was 11 years living in it as an expat. It was 11 years that went from me as a transition from personal trainer to online fitness business to then online business coaching to then the company that eventually then sold. And so all of these things happened in life that was then like, oh, I'm different. I'm unsure. I was completely flabbergasted. I was not myself. And then I learned about Alison's work, went deep diving into that. And it was very interesting because both my wife and I could be like, oh, I'm in the tunnel right now. Like this is it. And then when I went back through the math of the timing that she had, I was like, this is bang on. Like I was astounded by how accurate she was with the timing of everything. Yet I was 36 at the time as well. So like that was the one thing I was like, well, I'm a lot younger than what she said everything was, but I did start younger when it came to like really putting my nose to the ground and working hard and dedicating myself and blah, blah, blah. And so I felt like after coming out of the tunnel, I'm a different human being. I literally felt different. And I struggled then being able to look back into the boy that was not that long ago. And so for me, it was a case of I'm a different human being and I need to first know myself before I can then really start to share this out. I also see a lot of performative authenticity that's like out in the world right now. And I just wasn't vibing with it. And I was like, no, I don't know me. I've got to sort my shit out. I'm turning all this stuff off because I don't feel like I'm giving the world my best self when I don't even know who really I am right now. So then I decided, I was like, you know what? None of my income was actually related to any of the social media stuff anyway. So I was like, fuck it, I'm turning it off. And so I just made that decision and I made that very clear, distinct experiment to myself. I was like, I'm going to turn all of this stuff off until I sort my own stuff out, until I'm clear with where I want to take my life. And then if I want to turn it back on, I'll turn it back on. And then I came back to this point where I was clearly out of the tunnel and I was like, I feel good. I feel clear. I feel strong. I feel like I'm standing on my ground and now I can actually be able to give. And it's been astounding coming from this position now. Really astounding.
I love that, dude. It so resonates with me. I came back to Instagram kind of, it was almost like as I popped out of the tunnel, I came back to Instagram and it just, as you said, like I knew who I was. I knew the ground I stood on. I was very clear about what I wanted to share. It didn't feel performative. It felt like this is me. This is my shit. This is maybe something that might help. And if not, like, I'm going to try to make it fun and funny and silly, but also have some nuggets in there if you're curious about it. And it's become really fun to explore that, because it was very different than what the previous 3 years had been. It had been mostly just podcast trailers, and I just didn't have anything to share that was worthwhile because I didn't know who the fuck I was. And it's like you were talking about this concept, and it's really this, we go from such certainty to uncertainty, and it's to really surrender to that, I think, is a big challenge. And I think I was unwilling to, on some level, not know what the fuck was going on. And so I would continue to, use different stimulants to create some sort of creativity, energy, some wherewithal to get moving every day, when really I just needed to surrender to what was happening and pay attention. And maybe that prolonged my tunnel period. Who knows? What I am pretty clear on is that popping out of that gave me so much context for why that 3-year period for me. I mean, it may have been longer than 3. She says it's 6 months to 3 years. I would argue mine was closer to 4, but it was really challenging. But I was curious, like, what it's felt like to come back, and you just said it, you're just clear. And so it's probably not even a conscious decision in some ways. It's like, this is just what I meant to do. And I see you're sharing a lot of stuff that feels really true for you, and very consistently. So what has that process been like versus what it was like 6, 8, 12 months ago?
So just before the trip where we first got together, I had just gone through some pretty intense depression and suicidal ideation. Like I was in a really dark place before then. And then being able to work through that and see that as a gift might be too strong of a word to give it, but it was something I was able to then work through and feel stronger after it. And being able to now creatively, my position when I create and when I share is simply, I'm just trying to work on my shit and work through myself and be my best self. And if there is anything that I can then leave as breadcrumbs and trails and be able to share from what my experience is and somebody else can profit, amazing. If you don't, that's cool either. But ideally, like, I'm sitting right now in this conversation because I want to learn from you. I want to see what comes out with me. I want this just to be a fascinating conversation from myself. And it would be amazing as well when the listener and viewer is able to take something positive from that as well. I think that's a win-win-win that's incredible at the same point. But from my perspective, when I sit down and I write an essay, it's because the topic of that essay, the question, the problem that I'm actually solving is something I have to solve for myself. And the book that I'm writing at the moment, I think it's going to be called The Art of Enough, or Enough is Enough, or something. It's around the concept of what is enough. And from my perspective, I was so driven by money from an early age because I grew up in a family that didn't have money. Both of my parents were 17 when I was born. And so I've been gifted with these really young parents. And my journey was seeing as living in a family that did not have money, seeing my parents work and slog so goddamn hard to be able to best provide for me. Them clearly say as well, like, we never gave you a cent. Like, you have been able to create all of this yourself as you've gone through it. And I love and appreciate that was the experience that I've gone through. I've gone through the forgiveness exercises. I've gone through all the therapy and psychotherapy. I've done a shit ton of psychedelics. I've done that stuff, which has been incredible as well. And I see how it's helped in different facets and all the different therapies and healings and all of those things as well. So when I sit down now to be able to create, whether it's an essay, whether it's shooting a video for YouTube, whether it's having a conversation for a podcast, whether it's an Instagram post, it's literally me wanting to be able to have some transmission, some creativity, some answer be able to come through that helps me to be able to work through it. And so a lot of the time, there was a recent post that I did, and I shared it initially, and then it actually came from a letter that I wrote to myself. And so I actually just put it into the format, which is like, to Chris. And then I went through it. And a bunch of people just lost their shit reading it because they resonated with that same message as well. And a lot of the things where I am looking at beliefs within myself, and I look at this belief and I really try and see it, is it best serving me? Is this actually helping me be me right now? Because when I think about a question such as, why am I not being the fullest expression of myself? Why am I not achieving or being or doing the things that I really want to be able to have? And then being able to say, well, what are the possible beliefs that I'm having that are stopping me from showing up in this way? For example, like in the car when we were driving here, we're having a discussion, and I had said that a mutual friend of ours said something, and to me, I really picked up. I was like, oh, I've really been half-assing a few different areas of what I've been doing, especially when it came to the creativity and everything like that as well. Like my company and money making is over here. Do you know what I mean? So therefore, I'm not having to do this and create and shoot and interview and do all of these other things for money. I'm doing it because I want this to be an expression and betterment for myself. And so being able to come from that context has been empowering, to say the least.
What's the biggest thing you've pulled from, the book that you're writing right now? What, I forget who said it, but it's something to the effect of, we write the book that we want to read, not the stuff that we already know.
The only reason I'm writing it. The only reason I'm writing it is because I've got to sort this out for myself. So for me, it was.
By the way, you're a beautiful writer. You're on your website, chrisdufey.com. We'll link to that. But you have some incredible essays. So yeah, I really enjoyed going through those.
Well, if at any point, Cal, you want to kick me up the ass to be able to write more, please do so, because I want to be able to produce more. And honestly, it's me being able to be like, no, this is my time and space where I sit down and I be able to write. And I don't make the excuses. Like I started the new company like 9 weeks ago. So that's obviously been a lot of time and effort going into that. And then previously it was percolating inside of me and be like, oh, okay, I feel like I want to build something now since selling the last company. And so this came out of me. But for me, the writing it's healing. It's healing. And being able to see a problem, such as the book. The concept was, well, what is enough? And I wanted to truly answer that from a practical, philosophical point of view, where I could really be able to form an argument for myself and to be able to live from that place, knowing what the truth can be from that. And it's been really interesting being able to go through the different arguments that can be made for why does somebody want to strive for more? Why do you want more at the end of the day? Are you just going after something that is something you don't actually want to be going after? Like, is it just mimesis? Do you mean like Rene Girard's mimetic theory? If I'm hanging around a certain people and they're wanting to achieve and go after certain things, I can fall into mimesis and then start going after other things. And that's not truly myself, which I have done many times before. And so it comes under what I see as bullshitting myself. And so if I'm bullshitting myself, I'm effectively telling myself a porcupine lie that is not the truth to where I need to be as well. And it's not best in alignment with myself. And so it's been interesting. If like, money's an interesting part because it's one of the easiest scoreboards to look up at. And especially coming from the entrepreneurial world and loving that so much, and then now being able to be inside of so many businesses, it's easy to look up at the scoreboard at the end of every day, at the end of every month, at the end of every quarter, and be like, hey, this is what's going on right now. But the things that miss that in so many different contexts is, well, what am I not seeing by looking up at that? Am I seeing the relationship with my wife, with my 4 daughters, with myself, with my friends, with my health? And so I've worked to try and keep it practical for myself. So at the end of every day, like I journal every day quickly. It's not a long process. And I rank myself in 6 areas of life every single day. So with myself as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, and my health and my happiness. They're the 6 areas that I look at every single day. And at the start of the day, I'll give myself an intention. So this is important. I want to make it
in each of the areas, or just an overall intention?
Each of the areas. In every 6 of the areas, I'll write an intention for the day. My intention for today as a friend was to have a great connection with yourself and David. My intention as an entrepreneur was to get a couple of things done that I got done earlier this morning. Now, I'll rank myself as those as well. So practically, as a friend, as an entrepreneur, with my health, let's say, for example, I'll rank high today because I've been able to set a clear intention and I would have achieved those things. But as a father and a husband, I'm going to give myself a 1 out of 10. Why? Because I'm in Austin right now and my family's in Australia. Like I'll have some audio notes and stuff like that as well. We have a bit of a family ritual at dinner time. We ask ourselves 4 questions, which is, what was my favorite part of today? What am I looking forward to tomorrow? What am I grateful for? And what's one thing that I did kindly for somebody else, right? So there's 4 questions that we go through. And so our kind of little rituals of families, whenever I'm away, that they go around the dinner table and they'll do an audio note and send me that and I'll do the same back. And so that's our little connection on a daily basis.
Beautiful.
It's amazing and it's great, but like I'm not there. I'm not picking them up from school today. And I've struggled with that, which is interesting. Previous to coming out of the tunnel, I really struggled with it. Like I remember being on that trip when I first met you, and at the end of the day, every day, if I wasn't crying, I was pretty close to crying because I was like, fuck, I'm away from the family. I feel guilty. And I felt so guilty. I had this conversation with Stephanos. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I had this conversation with Stephanos, and I said to him like how guilty I was feeling during the whole time. And it was actually just my birthday before then as well. And I didn't celebrate it. I didn't even tell any of my friends it was my birthday coming up. Like I just completely shunned the whole thing. And Stefan was like, dude, that's terrible of you. Like we got to fix that. I was like, I know. But what's interesting now is I don't feel so much of the guilt. I can clearly see that it's gone down because I know that I'm on my mission. And there's me on my mission, and I'm very clear and distinct about that and what I have to do, and also how that parlays into helping and aiding and providing for my family as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've traveled quite a bit recently, and my wife, Lauren, is incredible. And she's like, you go do your thing because I see that you need to go do your thing. And she's fully supportive of that. And she's like, I've got this here. Do you mean we have our rules and regulations as like, I don't want to be away for too long as well because she's got 4 girls between 2 and 10 at the moment that she's handling and doing marvelously. And so for me, it's just been a case of how am I best able to then answer these different questions? And with this book, how much is enough? How much money is enough? Because I remember when I did my first $100,000 month, I was like, oh my God, 100 grand in a month. That's incredible. And then I remember very clearly seeing shortly after, like I had the thought, 100 grand a month, amazing. How fast can I get to $1 million a month? And then I caught myself with that thought after, and I was like, hang on, is that a healthy thought? And I don't know about you, Cal, but like I will achieve something. Is like as soon as I'm there, like as soon as I sold my last company, I was like, that's good. All right, I want to continue on to the next thing. Do you know what I mean? Like I already knew what I wanted to move on to, and therefore I just continued on. But I've been crap at celebrating, and I've been crap at enjoying the process as much. Like I know if someone was like, oh, like what's the advice that you would give your 20-year-old self, Chris? I'd be like, enjoy more of the process. Enjoy the ups and enjoy the downs. It's all part and parcel of it. It's all natural for it to happen that way. So for me, it's been interesting finding this, and therefore the whole intention is for me to become at more peace with myself.
Yeah, I think we hit on a lot of things there. Good God. Like first and foremost, this idea of when we hit the thing, the 100,000, like there is a natural inclination. It's the society, that we've been brought up in, indoctrinated in, conditioned, however you want to call it.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is interesting. It's just like, I'm driving a bus over myself right now. So just before coming on this trip, I was in like this business mastermind. Everyone in there is like 7, 8 or a 9-figure entrepreneur doing amazing things and starting this new company. So it's like 9 weeks old. Anyway, we've rocketed from the beginning and not even done the things I feel like will really then drive it. And then I set a goal for what I wanted to do within the first 12 months of it. And I was like, well, that's a hairy, audacious goal. Like but I was like, inside, I was like, no, I can do this. Like it felt real. And I had a really good friend with me at this event. And you could see this conflict I was in. I was in this conflict between short-term growth and like getting there. And I like breaking records. Like I like pushing myself and being like, I want to be able to achieve fantastic business success. I want to be able to be in great physical shape. I want to have a great marriage and sex life. I want to be an incredible father to my daughters. Like I want all of these. I don't want to just be a one-dimensional human being. That to me feels like mediocrity and just weakness all over. I don't want that. And so I'd set these goals with these, what I call enabling constraints, such as I want to be able to achieve this thing, but I also only want to work 16 hours a week, 4 days, 4 hours, right? So I was like setting these enabling constraints for me to be able to get there. And my friends saw that I was in this conflict between this short term, I need to get to this goal in 12 months, but also how do I want to operate for the next 25 years? And are they congruent with each other? Or am I doing one that's out of alignment with each other? So sorry to interrupt you before, but it was just another thought that came to me, which was, I can see what I'm doing to myself. And is there a pro and a con there? And how do I best navigate these waters?
Well, that's it. It's just like you have an awareness around it, which maybe not too long ago you wouldn't have had. And maybe I don't have. And I've even noticed with some of my 25-year goals, I created them less than 2 months ago, and I created them through this inspiration. And as I start to work through them, what feels more in alignment. And so to be okay to almost like renegotiate them. It's like I'm different than I was 2 months ago. And so I have more experience. I have more, kind of boots on the ground experience with these different areas. And so what does that look like? Holding the idea that not doing it in the sense of making them smaller to play smaller to make it more attainable. And so there's like that balance of how do I hold a vision that's big enough for everything? And how do I also stay congruent in what I'm doing in the day-to-day today and for the next 12 months to create what I want to create? And I think there's so much that happens through our daily experience that helps us inform that. And so I think staying present to that, which brings me, again, I'm going to rabbit hole it a little bit here, but this concept of what is enough and what does that look like? In a lot of ways, it is these empirical scoreboard where we can say a number or some sort of level of achievement that we can point to. When we continue to move the goalpost when we hit the thing, like, is that just another form of numbing and distraction to keep us from being present with all the other things that actually aren't measurable? Kind of a dad I am, what kind of a husband I am, what kind of a friend I am, what am I creating in the business here? Those things, it's a feeling, and it's felt by both parties. I can't think I'm a great dad when my kid doesn't think I'm a great dad. There's a incongruency there, and so this concept of what is enough and what does that look like? And I can just imagine as you're doing your deep dive into this that you have been and will continue to get pulled into these other areas. Because there's the part that you can say, well, there's a number that's enough, maybe, and you hit it, and then that maybe that's not enough. But what part of our life does that play? And I loved your essay when you talk about marrying the family man and the alpha male. And I think I really struggled with that. I was alpha male for a long time and did my part. I felt like I was a good family man. And my wife, Peyton, was like, look, I appreciate all the alpha male stuff that you've created, all the things we have, but all I really want is connection in your heart. And I was like, oh, so I got to choose. And that's where it went a little bit off the rails for me because I was no longer on mission. And I was just trying to be a great husband and a great dad. And I was not doing that either because it was only a part of me. And so I love your deep dive into how do we bring these things together to feed off one another, and then it's exponential. And so I've just said a bunch of fucking stuff.
No, this is good.
But so much of it is what I've learned from just reading your stuff, listening to you, and again, just like being really inspired by the questions you're asking and not the answers you're landing on, but the more questions and the curiosity, and you're allowing everybody to put themselves in that experience. And I think that is one of your gifts that a lot of people don't share. There's a lot of it is prescriptive for people. And that doesn't resonate with any of us unless we're operating we've all been at those lower levels when we're looking for something and it's maybe a little bit of a crush, but we're not really going anywhere. You're drawing in people that are asking like real life questions. And I love that about the work you're doing.
I appreciate that a lot. There's probably 12 threads I would happily.
I told you I was going to rabbit hole it.
This is great. So let's pull on a few of them. Number one is a case of, do you really know what it is that you want? And doing the work to be able to get to that clarity of what it is that we want. Two is stop compromising. Too many times I found within myself, and therefore I was then seeing in others, people just compromising all over the place.
We talked about this with the whole, when it becomes non-binary, you get to compromise so easily. But when things get through the binary lens, you know when you're out of integrity.
Yeah, absolutely. So integrity, it's such a pristine word. To be integrous with yourself. I believe for myself, one of the key attributes that I work towards is being able to put my head on the pillow at the end of every night in admiration of myself, to be proud of who I was, how I showed up as a person throughout the entire day in all of the different areas of my life. That is something that I really firmly work towards on a daily basis. And am I doing that? And again, like the 25 year, I still struggle with the 25 year thing. Like seeing 25 years, I'm like, God damn it, I don't even know really what's going to be happening next week. But it only is for what I believe. It's only a feeling that we're moving towards. And so how do I want to feel? So for me, it was like, okay, I want to feel a certain way. And for me, I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel equanimous. I want to be able to feel joy. I want to be able to feel fulfilled. I want to feel like there is meaning behind that. And essentially all of these words are trying to guide us to a feeling that we're trying to be able to have at the end of the day. Then there is the case of, okay, there is a North Star. I do believe that we need a North Star to work towards. So there is a goal. Like we're talking about goals.
In each of the different areas.
Totally. Like, so there is a goal. There's a direction in which I want to be able to go towards. But for me, so many of my mistakes was I was too goal orientated.
Yeah.
And where now I think of, okay, that's my North Star. Now, what are the processes and systems, habits and actions that I do on a daily basis? And I just focus on that.
Yes.
I just focus on that, right? Am I training, but am I training with intensity? Am I nourishing myself the right way? Am I nourishing my mind, my brain, my spirit, my soul the right way? Am I spending time with the right quality people? Like what are the daily actions that I must be doing to be able to get me there. Because if I'm just taking the right steps, it's like the Buddha says when he says when I'll bugger the quote of him. The Buddha says when emptiness and compassion has arisen, enlightenment is unavoidable. Unavoidable. He's talking about enlightenment, a big grandiose thing that many people think is, oh my God, like that's the goal, right? Unavoidable. That's a bold promise that he's making. Yeah. So for me, I'm saying, well, how do what's the recipe that I need to be able to have the things lined up so that what I get is unavoidable? Because the thing that I can't control is time. I can't, we can't even answer what time is at the end of the day. However, so as long as I'm going in the right direction, I'll get there one day. And there is a certain level of faith and knowing that that is what's going to happen. But then there's also the case of, well, then how do I have to show up on a daily basis so it doesn't feel hard and doesn't feel constrictive? So let's use the example of somebody wanting to get in shape. A lot of people have come up and been like, oh my God, Chris, you're in amazing shape. You're so disciplined. I get so many people saying you're so disciplined. Now, I know that there is a certain level of pain tolerance and discipline that I've had. I also feel like I was so good in like the warrior archetype and I held that on for too long before transcending to like more of a king, more of a wizard, like going into those other realms. But for me, I was like, I really thought about it after quite so many people said it. I go, I don't think I'm that disciplined if I got to be really real. And then it hit me. I was like, no. It's actually my identity. When Chase goes, oh, like how many times do you go to the gym? And I'm like, oh, 5-6 times a week. Like I know that I'm going to train today and I don't have to force myself. Like it's just because it's my identity. So for me, I was like, okay, how do I craft the identity so that I'm doing the things on a daily habitual basis that will then get me to where I want to go in an unavoidable fashion. So it was kind of like peeling that onion to be able to come back to, well, this is who I have to be and what is it that I need to do to craft this person, to craft this man so that the rest of it is quite seamless. Yeah. I want to be able to say to myself, Cal, I'm the most successful person I know. Like in all areas, not just not the money stuff. Like put that to the side. That's cool. That's fun. But we know that's not the be all and end all. I mean success in all of it, in everything. I want to be able to say to myself, today is a good day to die. Because when I can say to myself, today's a good day to die, to me, that means I know I've showed up in the best way possible and I haven't left anything else on the table.
Have you found, so let's just talk about training for a little bit in your health. And do you find some sort of contentment there? Like, how do you,
I love the challenge of it.
And so it's just like every day, just
love the challenge.
You hit it hard every day, or do you have like your kind of off days where you're?
Oh, there's days where I go to the gym and I'm like, oh, this sucks. I don't feel good. I didn't sleep well last night. Like our 2-year-old has been up all night. Stresses come up, all that sort of stuff. But I enjoy the challenge of putting my best foot forward and giving it my all. And there's definitely days where I walk out of the gym and I was like, that was a terrible workout, but I still did it.
You showed up.
I still did it. I'm going to have to show up better the next day. And that is the process that I enjoy.
Would you say that your training has a little bit more of a bodybuilder kind of foundation? Yeah. I mean, you obviously got a lot of muscle on you.
I think that's where I came from, the athletic sport side first. And then I went into the physique training, and being a physique coach, I knew that's what I was really good at. Then, Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai really came into it. So now that's a part, like the Muay Thai is definitely a part of my movement and my training as well. But it's definitely more, I'm in the gym and I want to be able to like lift heavy things, put them back down where I first found it and kind of like move on. That's where I feel good. And I found my enjoyment in wanting to progress there. And if I stop enjoying it, I need some other type of movement, I'll happily go there. But that for me right now is, I feel my best.
Yeah. I feel like I'm trending back that way, like what we did just now. So for people who are listening, we did a 20-minute workout where it was every minute on the minute. We worked for about 30 seconds and then rested for 30. We did that for 20 minutes. It was pretty good. Ball slams, ball over shoulder, assault bike. We did some kettlebell stuff and some dumbbells. You can get it going. And then we did 5 minutes where we teamed up for 15 to 20 seconds, hammering the assault bike.
That was fun.
Like that heavy breathing lactate stuff. For me, it's really fun. And I know at 52, it's not the best thing to do on a daily basis. And so like getting back into more of the bodybuilding, which is when I transitioned out of CrossFit, I did a lot of weight training and that felt really good. And, you know, building muscle, maintaining muscle, and just giving your body time to recover, especially, you know, again, as I get older, recovery from those, you know, those ball kickers is a little bit longer, you know, but some in the mind, I don't always think that. And so I may go back to it again day after day because I enjoy it. It's pretty simple. I don't have to think that much. And it's generally on the shorter side.
I know I probably train more than what I should, but mentally and just how I feel after it is where I feel my best. And I'm like, okay, like I'm totally there. Like if someone was to really critique everything that I'm doing, like, oh, you could, do you mean you could do it with less training or less load or less intensity and less volume? Like, yeah, that's cool, but I just enjoy it. Do you mean like, and I think there's an aspect of like, I like it. And if somebody likes something and it's good for them and it's obviously bettering them, amazing. Then continue on with that, please.
Yeah, and I think that's the overarching piece for me and for others is if you are doing something that is getting the blood moving every day on a consistent basis, even if it's not quote unquote the best thing for you, you're creating a habit. And over time, you can shift that to make it more kind of a long-term longevity strategy or whatever your goals are. But it's the fact of just getting out there and committing to it. And
yeah. And also to say that and to push back a little bit as well. I went through a period where I literally traveled the world and I would train with some of like the best people, like some of the best bodybuilders, some of the best strength coaches. And every single time, the biggest part that I got out of it. Okay, so for example, I'll use a story. There was this little period of time where I used to train with a couple of Balinese bodybuilders. And the training sessions were hard as nuts. And let's just use their nutrition as kind of like a pinpoint for this. Their intra-training nutrition. So like you look at some people and their intra-training nutrition is really technical and it's advanced and it's exact grams of this and the whole concoctions. Their intra-training was a handful of branched-chain amino acids in the mouth with a banana and you chewed it together to then swallow it down and then keep on going. And it was interesting because I saw these paradox of worlds where there were some people there was just like all the gear and no idea. Do you know what I mean?
I like that. Yes.
And then there was these guys that were just like doing it on the absolute fundamentals with barely any money behind them and all the resource, like any resource that they could get their hands on, like putting a mouthful of branched chain amino acid caps and then half like a mouthful of banana and trying to chew it all down and then getting into the next set. But they were training their absolute balls off every single session. The volume was insane. Like I would literally crawl out of the gym. And so by going through the experience and training through all these amazing strength coaches and bodybuilders, like every single session, was always like, oh, the intensity matters. Like being able to get into a different gear, I think is really important. I think a lot of people are just training with the intensity of a butterfly fart and they're not actually going after it. So yes, 100%. And it depends at where you want to go and like what you want to achieve. But I think a lot of the time people are like, oh yeah, I am going there. And they're just getting way too Huberman. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, you know what? Just fucking put some effort in, brother. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, are you real? And again, the effort is something that you have to build upon as well. Like you have to be able to stack that and have intensity experience for you to get better at that. But that's when it's like, when you know that you can change gears and you can really go up a level. I know for myself, this is why I love training Muay Thai, is because I know if I've half-assed the session. I know if I half-assed the session, and I hate finishing the session knowing I didn't really give it my all. And so, and the trainer knows as well. And I go there and I'm there and I'm like, I'm here to go all out. Don't let up on me. Like, don't let up on me. And I think that's a part of self-love, is expecting more out of yourself.
That circles back to setting the container for your goal setting and your North Star. And it's like just expecting more out of yourself. I think that's been a big shift for me. Is like doing those hard things. Maybe it's getting in the cold plunge every day and just committing to that and not letting it be a negotiation. Now, there is negotiating that's going on my way to the cold plunge for sure, but I'm going to do it. And it's moving every day in some capacity. Setting these things up where it just becomes, as you said, you just do it. You don't think about it. It has to be a part of your day. And with that, it reminds me of back when I was in high school, and there were a couple seasons I played a sport. I played soccer and I played hockey, and then there was in the spring I didn't play anything, and like my after school was for shit during that season. But when I had soccer or I had hockey, my schoolwork was on point. I was training. I was doing all the things because I didn't have this kind of plethora of time to dick around with. And I felt like up until recently, I just had nothing but time and I was doing nothing. And having a schedule and having things that are non-negotiables throughout my day have dialed in what that looks like. Now, for me, there's a balance between that and being super rigid with that. So how do I bring these things in, be connected to them, and still show up on mission and as a family man? And that's like the piece that I'm working to orchestrate right now.
So a lot of the conversation so far has been like bro stuff, which I love and totally into. But within saying like doing hard things, for example, I find this an interesting conversation because one, who says it's hard? And what is hard? Like a lot of time people will be like, hard. It's like, how much weight are you putting on your back when you're squatting? And are you doing your cold plunges? And how long are you staying in there for? I'm like, okay, that's hard. But what about saying sorry? What about saying I love you to someone that deserves it? What about being first to forgive somebody? Like, what about those things? They're hard as well. And are we showing up to those? Because I think there's the physicality side of things, but then there's also everything else that we need to take care of in our life as well. And those things I feel like can get too forgotten in so many conversations where it's like, yeah, cool. Like, all right, I did my cold plunge today, but you know what? You didn't call your mum and say thank you, for example.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's those different aspects of how we can look at what is hard, what is not, how am I best showing up? And then how do I tie, like you just said before, like how do I tie all of this stuff in together? For me, coming out of the tunnel, it was very clear there are 4 values or 4 virtues that align with myself. And it's my health, my wealth. It's going to be with my relationships and wisdom. They're like the 4 things that I categorize. And so I find it really interesting when it's a case of, do I know I should do something or should not do something? Like what we were talking about previously in the car. It's very clear for me. Like saying yes and no is very easy now. And I know if it aligns with my 4 values, and if it doesn't, it's not there. Like if you looked at my calendar, if you looked at my bank statements, you would see a theme that it falls in with these 4 things. So with my wealth, for me specifically, it's the business building and entrepreneurship side. Then it's going to be my health. Like, am I moving? Am I nourishing myself? Am I doing the things that I need for me to actually best? So I am looking, feeling, performing the way that I want on a daily basis. wisdom? Am I actually being able to better myself so I can have wiser choices, ask wiser questions to get to wiser answers? And relationships, how am I best showing up to the people that are in my life for me to be able to best be able to support and provide for them? Outside of that, I don't watch sport. Like, do you mean like it's not in there? I'm just not interested in it. Like, and those the kind of like I'm not interested in. It's interesting how it's just it falls by the wayside, and I don't have leaky energy towards it. I feel like it's very integrous.
I love that you bring that up because when those things all fall by the wayside, it feels really good because you can reflect back, or I can reflect back when I would just spend hours on those things all day and just be fucking spinning my wheels and be hooked on it, much like a drug. But I also want to circle back to what you absolutely nailed, this idea of hard things. And I think it's so easy, I did it, to focus on the hard physical things and the hard mental things. But we don't talk enough about what you talked about is the emotional, the vulnerability, the true vulnerability that we're being called to step into. And all those things you talked about, being able to initiate a conversation to say, I'm sorry, or what's going on? Are you okay? Versus my go-to is to hide because I feel like I'm in trouble because I'm a 7-year-old again. And I love just reorienting towards the hard things. Those are truly the hardest things, because what I did on the assault bike with you, because of how hard you were going, you pushed me to a place I haven't been in a long time on the assault bike. That was really fucking hard. And I could do it again because it's a physical, mental thing. The emotional piece of really opening up my heart at the risk of feeling like I might die, even though that's not true, but it is a belief. That's terrifying. I wouldn't want to go do the assault bike again with you, but I would. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I love just bringing this to the forefront of what's really being asked of us as men today.
A great example for myself is my marriage, and having gone through, we were so close to separating. And
How long ago was this?
6 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
where we truly both were like, well, this is actually on the precipice. And it tore me apart. The thought of not having her by my side, the thought of not being the family unit that we are, and not being able to see my children, my daughters every single day, all of that stuff tore me apart. But I went through this period where I was asking a question whether I wanted to show up in every different area of my life. Like there was one day I was in the gym. I just stood there for like 2 minutes. I was like, do I want to be the dude that actually goes to the gym? Like I'm questioning everything. And then it came to my marriage, and I was questioning my marriage. And I was like, we're coming up to 12 years of marriage, and truly asking, like, is this right? Have our paths actually, are they diverging right now? And what was interesting for me was I was coming out of the tunnel, and Allison says, like, the woman has to be ready for when the king comes home. And Laura and I both agreed that she wasn't ready, but also then she had gone through her transformation as well. So like just me not being such a selfish prick and thinking about myself, like she went through 11 years of either breastfeeding or being pregnant.
Oh yeah.
Because there was 5 pregnancies, we had a miscarriage. So with 4 children and a miscarriage, there was 11 years of her. She's gone through this miraculous, beautiful transformation coming into her as a woman today, being able to move forward. So there was literally, I literally feel like I'm now, I have this new wife. And she says the same. And so, but it went through a really fucking rough patch to be able to get there, which was really hard to be able to go through. And for me, it was having to check myself and having to become a better human being and a better man to be like, no, how do I best support Lauren? And how do I best actually move through this? How do I be the best husband right now? How do I open up my heart? Because I was so closed off. I was so closed off. And I had to be able to learn and do the work to actually open up and to be like, and to truly become vulnerable to her. Because I think I've kept a piece of myself since we first got together. And I truly hadn't fully opened up.
Why do you think you held on to that piece?
I didn't want to be hurt. I wanted to be safe. And now being in the situation where we both choose each other, and there is very much the opportunity, like she can at any day be like, you know what, not for me, and I don't choose you. And that's okay. But it's a case of like, I would be utterly crushed, but I know I'm going to be okay. And I don't feel like in relationships where people say like, oh, it's like 50%, 50%. I'm like, no, it's 100%, 100%. I know my math doesn't work out that way, but it's not a fucking mathematic competition.
Yes. Yeah.
Marriage. I have to show up for absolutely everything that I possibly can, and to be able to operate from where I need to best show up for this woman and for us as a family as well. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying to find them.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I think one of an important, and I've seen this in your work before, and I really loved it. There's this concept of happy wife, happy life.
It's bullshit.
And it gets thrown around a lot.
So
and
bullshit.
It just has never felt right.
What a weak man says that.
Yes.
What a weak man.
And you say happy self, happy spouse. And I love that. And it's I just had a buddy on the podcast, Michael Chernow, and he talks about how he's like, I'm top of the totem pole. I fucking love my family, but if I'm not taking care of me, number one, everything else is fucked. And so it's this idea of really acting, it's not selfish, it's out of self-interest to bring your best self to all the areas of your life, and like why we need to do that.
I do see where there has to be harmony in what is it that I need to do for Chris to be the best Chris, and then what does Lauren need to do to be her best Lauren, and then obviously with 4 children as well, what did they need to be doing as well, and then how do all of these parts of this organism work together to have harmony as well? Like, and you said a word near the start of this conversation, prescription. I think too many people are looking for a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a prescriptive world. Give me the 7 steps to get to 7-figure business.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Give me the 4 secrets to have a happy marriage. No, that does, like, okay. Yes, it helps to be able to have that. And psychologically, as a marketer, I know to be able to use those things because it's going to be able to get them moving forward, right? I know that, like, I get it. But in the truth of what it is that's needed to be able to best live life at the end of the day, we can't have a prescription. I want to be able to pick up what I can from yourself, from others, from everything, to be able to then be able to best figure out how I move forward with myself. But if I'm constantly out there giving me, no, Cal, just give me the 10 steps, dude. Give me the 10 steps. What do I need to do? It's not going to be the truest answer for myself.
No.
And as soon as I was able to actually accept that, shit got a hell of a lot easier. Hell of a lot easier.
Well, dude, I think we're at time. Yeah, we're right at it.
Damn it.
I know. We're just getting cooking. Okay. You've got 2 different Instagrams. So where are people going to follow you?
Yeah, there's an old one. Chris Dufey, CHRISDUFEY.
We'll link to that, but yep. So Chris, not Christopher. Got it.
Then it's the Christopher Dufey podcast and Chris Dufey YouTube.
And then chrisdufey.com.
chrisdufey.com. Yeah.
And then just a little plug for the newest business you're working on.
Oh, I've not publicly really even talked about it. So I named the business the Rainmakers. And so really all we do is we run the marketing and strategy for be able to grow coaching businesses. So if a coaching business wants to be able to grow, if there's a coach that goes, I want to be able to help more people doing the work that I love, but I know I'm not the best person to be able to grow the business and to be able to make more money, then we are. And that's what we do. And that's at jointherainmakers.com. Didn't think you were going to bring that up, dude. So that's about it. There's barely any marketing material out there. But anyway, there you go.
Well, by the time this comes out, there'll be plenty.
Yeah.
Well, dude, awesome. Thanks for being here. So great to see you again.
I appreciate you, brother. I'll take this conversation as a kick up the backside and get this book done. So there's another excuse for us to sit down later, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it.